as you get older, it gets easier, right? Because I think it's harder, like when you're a kid, it's harder, right? Because you are trying to fit into certain groups, and you're trying to like please everybody, so it's harder. Yeah, but as you get older, like it gets easier and easier, right? So that's the only advice. So I mean, so it gets easier.
Welcome to Some Stutter Law, a podcast by the Communication Collaborative. Some Stutter Law is Newfoundland and Labrador's first podcast about living with communication disorders. We speak directly to people living with speech and language disorders and others such as speech-language pathologists, researchers, educators, and family members. We use inclusive language and themes to help rebuild confidence and hope by dismantling myths, stigma, stereotypes, and barriers. My name is Greg O'Grady, and I am a person who stutters and a co-host of Some Stutter Law, Newfoundland and Labrador's first podcast about communication disorders, along with my co-hosts.
And my name is Caitlin Mayo. I'm a speech-language pathology student, and I'm Greg's co-host on this podcast.
Some Stutter Law mission is dismantling and rebuilding communication disorders. Let's start listening. Some Stutter Law mandate is in the spirit of Newfoundland and Labrador's humor, robust and frank interactive discussions. Some Stutter Law podcast aims to rebuild confidence and hope for people who live with communication disorders by dismantling myths, stigma, stereotypes, and barriers.
Some Stutter Law podcast objectives are raising awareness, education, understanding, and acceptance of communication disorders by providing support, current information, research, and resources. Acknowledging that communication disorders are a quality of life issue. Throughout life, stuttering and other communication challenges can impact a person's life emotionally, educationally, physically, socially, and vocationally. We're creating a safe space where guests can be themselves without fear of being judged.
Today we welcome to Some Stutter Law Saran Crows. Saran is an engineering and computer science librarian at the University of New Brunswick, Fredericton. He has served in this role since 2013 and provides library instruction, reference, and liaison services to both the engineering and computer science faculties in UNB. He holds an honors BA from the University of Windsor, an MPA from Queen's University, and an MLIS from Western University. Saran also has a mechanical engineering technology diploma from Algonquin College and works as a computer numerical control machinist before his career as a librarian. Saran was born in Sri Lanka, and his family immigrated to Canada in 1991. He grew up in Ottawa, Ontario, and lived in many cities in Ontario before relocating to New Brunswick, where he resides currently. In addition to English, Saran also speaks Sinhalese and a bit of Tamil. Saran is a person who stutters, and he has been stuttering for most of his life. So welcome, Saran, to Some Stutter Law podcast.
Thanks for that introduction, Greg.
So Saran, would you share a little bit about yourself, your lived experiences as a person who stutters, your work?
Okay, so I have been stuttering all my life, right? So I started, I think I was like probably 5-6 years old when I started stuttering, and I've been stuttering I'm 41 now, right? So I've been stuttering all my life right now. So yeah, so I've been so we immigrated from Sri Lanka about 31 years ago. So we came to Canada, and then we So after that, we settled in Ottawa. So I went to high school over there, and after that, I got my education like all in Ontario. And then after all of that, I moved to after actually getting like some work experience as well. So after that, we moved to. So after that, I moved to Fredericton here. So I've been living here for about 8.5, 9 years now. Hopefully, I answered the question. Maybe I heard it right.
Oh no, you did. Thanks a lot, Saran. Saran, you mentioned in your bio that you speak several languages. When you're speaking in another language, do you notice any difference in your stuttering? Is there any degree of difficulty or other challenges?
That's a good question. So because I speak other languages, it's easier for me to talk to my cousins and my uncles and aunts and all those people who speak also English. Like it's easier for me to like use words from English to Sinhalese and so that way if I know like I'm gonna get stuck in a word, like I'm gonna use a Sinhalese word. So like, in that sense, it's kind of easy for me. Because I always talk other languages with my family, right? So I find that because I have other words, so I'm able to like use English words against English words, right? So as a result, I'm not stuttering as much when I speak to my family.
Saran, I'm wondering now, when you mentioned that you've been stuttering for most of your life, did you ever take any speech therapy? And if so, what was your experiences?
So obviously in Sri Lanka, because I came here when I was 11, like we didn't have any of that stuff. Like we didn't have speech therapy and all that. I mean, only thing that my parents told me to do was speak slow and calm down, right? Because they always told me to calm down, which made it even like way worse. So I mean, I didn't have any speech therapy over there. So after I came to Canada, like in high school, I had a little bit of speech therapy, maybe for a year and a half, a couple of years. But that didn't really help me because I found the speech therapist was always telling me to speak like really, really slow. And that's not like I have a hard time, right? We can't like I mean like I can't speak slow like that, right? Like it's hard for me to speak like every word like like speaking slow. So yeah, like I mean the speech therapy helped a little bit because I used to have my head used to go backwards, like my head used to move and everything too when I speak. So at least that thing kind of stopped. I mean, I'm not sure exactly. Like it was probably when I was like 18, 19. It stopped, right? And then like I still have obviously the stutter, yeah. But at the same time, like I mean, it used to be like really bad when I was younger, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you see, that actually reminds me, Saran, when you're talking about your secondary characteristics of stuttering. I remember when when I had my severe stutter, I used to really sort of if somebody asked me my name, I used to raise my right hand and say, "Look now, look now, look now, look like, look now, look now, look now. My name is Greg O'Grady." So can you imagine the looks that I got?
Yeah, like it was really bad in high school, right? Like people wouldn't understand like why it was happening and stuff. So I mean, as you get, like as you get older, obviously, I don't really care that much about like what other people think and whatnot, their opinions or whatever about that. But like like obviously, in high school, it was harder, right? It was harder because we are trying to be accepted by other people, so you're kind of like always trying to please other people, right? So it made it like terrible. So
when you became more aware of your stuttering, especially in your adolescent years, did you feel that stuttering affected your sense of identity in terms of did you equate yourself as a person who stutters? Did it impact your self-esteem, self-worth?
well, because I mean, I think because I was always stuttering, I had a lot of anxiety and stuff like that because of that. Because so I wouldn't so for example, if I had to go and go into a committee meeting and all these kind of meetings, I hate to introduce myself. Like I always hated that. Like that's like the worst thing that could happen. I rather ask a question or talk about an issue. Yeah, but I hated introducing myself. For some odd reason, I couldn't really say ran. So it was like, so I was always like kind of anxious about that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was always kind of, I don't know, I had anxiety around that. So I was always, I mean, I guess in terms of identity, I'm not really sure exactly what you're implying though.
Mm-hmm. Like some people who stutter tend to lack a lot of self-confidence. People please, performance management. We try everything just to impress people, just be accepted, sort of thing. Have you sort of did stuttering affect you in those ways?
Well, I mean, not really, because I mean, as I got older, I got more confident, right? So I cared like less about like what other people thought of me. So yeah, but when I was like in high school and stuff, I mean, obviously, like like I wanted to be accepted. So that was hard, yeah. But as I got older, like I really didn't care what other people thought of me, and if they had an issue with me, well, it's too bad, right? So yeah, so it didn't really affect me. Yeah, but only time I would get anxiety was with, when I have committee meetings, I have to go and introduce myself because it's not even speaking. I could go and talk to a classroom of 100 people for like 45 minutes, and I have no problem at all. It just the introduction was always harder. Like I don't know, for some odd reason, I couldn't. I still haven't fully understand like why is that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna jump in for a second. It's actually super common for people who stutter to stutter on their own name. Typically, people who stutter will stutter on words that are meaningful to them. So things like your name are very much a piece of your identity and very much meaningful to you. And so that's, I don't know, it's not always consistent all the time, but that could be a reason why that was happening to you. And it's a commonality across people who stutter. We've heard it in countless interviews that people struggle introducing themselves.
Yeah, like so that always gave me anxiety, right? So that would lead to other things after, right? Then so yeah, so introducing myself was always harder for me.
So, Ren, how are you now on the telephone? Do you have any challenges with the telephone?
Oh, I had like lots of issues. I remember like when I was like a kid, I used to, like my parents would tell me to go and answer the phone, right? And then I would pick up the phone and I couldn't say hello or like hi for some reason. And then I would just kind of act like it was, somebody hung up or something. And I would tell my parents that, right? So I would tell them, oh yes, like it was a wrong number or something like that, right? Because I couldn't say hello, so they would hang up on me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I mean, it was an issue when I was younger, but now I would probably like use some other words, so that way,
So, sir, when you're saying other words, are they starter words, or how would you answer a phone?
Yeah, I would, if I cannot say hi or hey or hello, I would probably say like yo or something like that, right? Like just to kind of like tell them I'm in the other side, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would try to like use some other word, like, so, I mean, I'm not exactly sure, like, yeah, like I would use a word like, like yo, or like, like if I can't say hey, I would use like hi or hello. So, like I would use a word that I know that it's gonna come out, right?
When I mean with me, I used to detest. I used to detest the phone ringing first thing in the morning in my office because I'm not a morning person, and then it took every ounce of energy to answer that phone. And much like you, I had my own little starters words. But I was very thankful when voicemail came in. I would just not answer and let it go to voicemail.
Yeah, that's great.
And I remember when I was working as well that I used to really enjoy recording my daily message in the morning at home. I was more relaxed. There's no distractions, no people around me, and this is amazing that the little tricks of the trade that we as people stutter develop. And one thing, listening to you, is I've always had a lot of anxiety, especially when the phone rang in a public place. If I was closer to the phone, much like you, it's an expectation that I would answer it. And I find that if it was noisy, if my surroundings were noisy, I was more comfortable answering the phone because if people heard some disfluency, I would blame it on the noise background. But if it was dead silence, then the anxiety was horrendous.
Oh yeah, it's like really bad when I answer the phone and stuff. Like I get anxiety when the phone rings. I'm like, oh my god, and after that I answer it, and then yeah. So the other thing I wanted to ask you guys is like there are sometimes like I'm very fluent. So like there are days I would be like very fluent, and then there are other days like I will not be able to like speak every second word. I'm stuttering, right? So I'm not sure why is that.
I don't think there is a why. I think it just happens. I mean,
Yeah, it just happens. I mean, there are times when I'm like really like fluent and I can speak like fluently. Then there are times I can't get a word out, right?
Yeah, I mean, some of the research says maybe like when you're more tired or more stressed, you'll stutter more, but it's a personal thing, and sometimes there's no reason that you can really pinpoint it to. So Greg can probably speak more to that than I can about personal reasons why someone might stutter more, because it's we don't know. It just happens.
It happens, yeah.
Well, it certainly does, Saran, because stuttering is so fluid. And I find myself that I actually feel like it's a pattern of behavior. I shouldn't say, perhaps it may be a learned behavior based on the listeners' reaction. Because sometimes, some of the reactions are so inappropriate. It becomes embedded in one's mind, and I find that so if I have to make a phone call, I anticipate. If I'm talking to a stranger, I anticipate a negative reaction. But the challenge that I'm finding is that I put so much emphasis on how a person looks and everything, their facial expressions, that I allow it to throw me off. And much like as Caitlin was saying as well, so sometimes when I'm tired, stressed out, depending on the phone call I've made or a meeting, sort of so it really is a combination of factors. But research says that people sort of need to really accept and embrace your stuttering. Where are you at with embracing and accepting your stuttering at this point?
Well, I mean, I have no choice, right? So I have to accept it, obviously. So, I mean, I got used to it, right? Like my family's used to it, and they know that I have a speech impediment and I stutter. So, like, I've never really had any problems with family. So it's really like when I'm kind of introducing and I'm creating a new person, like introduction is always hard, right? So that's one of the problems I always had. Like I always had like, oh, I have to go and introduce myself with this person. So I was always, I was kind of anxious about like introducing myself because I knew I was gonna stutter, right? So that was kind of always hard for me.
Would you be able to describe one of the biggest challenges you faced related to your stutter? What really points out as a really challenging experience?
Well, like one of the challenges I have like recently is because I'll have like, like I'm part of a whole bunch of committees and meetings. So like people don't understand, like half the time I'm not even paying attention to them because in my head, I'm trying to like formulate how I'm going to say something, right? So like it's it tends to be like very kind of distracting to my own, like, because I'm not even sure like the question because I'm trying to like formulate how I'm gonna like spit it out basically. So that's always been a challenge for me, and I'm like, okay, I mean, I think that's what she's asking, so I'm gonna like I'm getting, so it's always been problematic for me.
So what would be the deep root fear when you're in a situation like that? Is it like people's reaction, not understanding you, or?
Well, also like I may like use the like improper terminology or like good because if the other word like I'm having a hard time with, if it doesn't come out, I want to like use something else. And then I might like use an improper word or terminology, and then I could get in trouble for that, right? I mean, like for example, I was in a committee meeting. This is like I mean, it wasn't a committee; it was a full meeting that we had here. So I was in this meeting, and then I was asking a question, and then like I ended up like using the word hick. Like a guy says something like, oh, like all you guys are hicks or whatever. I'm not even sure exactly that I said it. But I use the improper good for that, so people get upset, right? They're like, oh, you're calling us hicks. So it's like, because I'm not even trying to like pay attention to what I'm saying at that point. I'm trying to like spit it out, right? So like it's always been hard that way.
Do you feel that stuttering is still controlling your life in many ways, Saran?
Yeah, of course. I mean, every time every time, even when I've been like, I've been an instructor, like I do instruction, like workshops and everything here, but at the same time, so every time I have to go and do all these presentations, I have anxiety, right? So I get like, okay, I have to go and do that. I have to go and do the presentation for half an hour or 45 minutes, like 1 hour. So yeah, so it gives me anxiety, and because of that, I have like sleeping disorders and a whole bunch of other stuff that are connected to that. So so it's always been challenging, yeah. Because it's really easy, like if you're kind of hiding, because like the problem is like the people who stutter aren't expected to be doing presentations or like workshops. Like we are kind of expected to be on the background. So if you're in front of 100 people and you're talking and you're stuttering, people have, people are, I mean, most of the time they are receptive, yeah, but there are times I've seen people roll their eyes and, do the, like they're talking to themselves. I'm not sure what they're talking about. So I'm just like, oh man, like this is not going smoothly, right? So. So I always had that kind of issue. I always had, I would go and do a presentation. I'm actually playing attention to how people react to me, and that kind of creates more of a problem for me, right? So it's going to be like, oh, because people are kind of like rolling their eyes or whatever, and now like it's just going to have an impact on my like speech even more. So I'm not sure if you had that experience as well. Like if somebody's like rolling their eyes on you, like.
Oh, definitely. I mean, this has just been a lifetime experiences with me. And what always annoyed me at meetings was that, especially if I'm blocking on one word, I'm having difficulty in one word. I'm trying my best to contribute to the conversation, and this is like amongst a professional group of people. And so I'm trying to contribute to it, and all of a sudden I get blocked, and then they move down to another conversation, and that didn't help my self-worth, Eddie, as a professional. Has that happened to you?
Well, I mean, I've had people ignore me because they're probably not sure exactly like what I was trying to say, right? Because if I'm stuttering on every word, I mean, there's a possibility that they have a hard time understanding me, right? So and then they kind of ignore the question and then kind of move on. Yes, yeah. So that had happened to me as well.
And then, unfortunately, when things, when these situations, clear their ugly heads, then I start to feel even less. It really affects my confidence, self-worth. I've left many meetings feeling so deflated, for example, and then add some of the train wreck speaking experience. Yeah.
It can also like there were times I've had like colleagues who told me that they thought I was angry, and I was like, no, I'm not angry. I'm just trying to get my words out, right? So it's like for them, it sounds like it was anger, because I'm not sure exactly like what they imply, yeah, but I've heard that before. So they're like, oh, because he's like I'm not sure exactly like why they yeah, so they thought I was angry. I mean, like it could be because I'm speaking loudly, or like it could be because I'm like screaming, maybe because I find like if I'm screaming, it's easier for me, or like speaking or loudly, right? So like just kind of helpful. So yeah, so I think that's the like reaction I get from my colleagues and whatnot, because they'll be, oh, like he's like screaming at us. I'm not really screaming at them because I'm trying to like use techniques to get my words out, right?
And unfortunately, Saran, in situations like that, it really impacts on one's relationships with their colleagues, And sometimes I used to get so annoyed. The last thing I want to do is to talk to these these colleagues and interact with them. But it builds up after a while, and then like it's a dynamic, professional dynamic with impacts to relationships. You know what I mean? I mean, with me, I used to be a lot of angst talking to some colleagues, and
yeah, like I've had people tell me that, like like you sound really angry or pissed off, and I'm like, no, I'm not angry at all. I was actually trying to talk, right? I'm trying to get my words out, and their expression is like, okay, he's like screaming at us. So it's just kind of, I'm kind of shocked by that, but I mean, that's how they react, right?
Serena, I'm not too sure if you're aware, but Caitlin is also planning on doing a clinical program in counseling as well, because I feel that the emotional component of stuttering is so neglected. And do you have any advice for Caitlin in terms of her future career in terms of not only being a speech language pathologist, but also having sort of the expertise in counseling people who stutter?
Well, I mean, I don't really have any advice. I could just tell her like how I feel, right? Because I mean, I have anxiety, because of my speech impediment. Because if I have to go and talk to a committee or a group of people, like I find like I can't sleep for like 4 or 5 days because I'm always constantly thinking about that. So, and that's gonna have a horrible reaction. Like, can it like actually comes to the committee meeting, right? Because because I'm so tired, or I'm like I have like so much anxiety about it. I just have a hard time getting my uh, words out, right? So yeah, so I have anxiety. Obviously, I mean, yeah, so that leads to like like all sorts of sleeping issues. I sleep like 4 hours like every day, kind of thing. Because yeah, so I guess that would like lead to depression as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the best.
Yeah, so
Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
it's okay, it's okay.
No, it's just
Go ahead.
the best way to learn about, what I'm going to do in my future is to hear from people who stutter and hear how they're feeling so that I can figure out what kinds of things work best for them. So that's what I find the most helpful about these interviews is just hearing about, the experiences of people who stutter.
So, yeah. So I mean, I wanted to also ask you guys a question. So I have heard that the stuttering it could be hereditary as well. Because I was talking to my dad like a long time ago. He passed away about 7 years ago. So I was talking to him, and then he told me that he used to stutter as a child, and then he stuttered until probably the age of like 14, and then it kind of died down. And as he got older, he didn't stutter at all. But as a child, he had a huge stutter, and he told me that his head used to move back and everything too. So I'm starting to think that it could be hereditary as well, right? And I also talked to a friend of mine who also stutters as well. So he told me that his father like used to stutter as well. So like I'm starting to see this pattern now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm sure Greg can talk more about having a family history of stuttering, or having family members that stutter. But in terms of, the research, I'm no expert, but at this point, nobody is, because it's you can't pin down a cause of stuttering. That's what all of the research says. But there are things that are kind of, likely causes, and it being hereditary is definitely one of them. There is definitely a genetic component to stuttering.
Mm-hmm. You see, Serena, I'm from a very large family. Well, I guess not that large, but I had 5 other brothers and 1 sister, and there's 4 of our there's myself and 3 other brothers that stutters, and but there's different, I guess, different ways of my other brothers that stutter. And but I've always classified myself as the most severe. My father stuttered as well, and then we actually never talked about it. But but my mother always said that I mean when they first met, my father had a bad stutter, but much similar to your father, uh, dad, we in our family we never talked about stuttering at all. People just part of the normal speech, the normal conversation. So so it's more accepted. Whereas, and plus, you see, back then, I mean, we had no access or even thought of a speech therapy. But I think there is as Caitlin was saying, we don't know what causes stuttering, but I think there may be a gene, a genetics, a connection to it.
Yeah, because I've been like reading about it, and I keep hearing that they had family members who would stutter, and then like either their father or brother or someone So I'm starting to think that, it's hereditary because of that, because it's like, okay, like what's going on here? Is it because of that, or like, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, like I had conversation with my dad. I was asking him, I'm like, like, did you have that before? And then he said, like, he had it, and I think like his father had a slight one as well. So like my grandfather like had one as well, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so like I'm starting to think that it could be hereditary. Hereditary.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
I know, and my two older brothers, and like after speaking to their wives, they used to, my brothers used to have asked their wives to speak on their behalf as well, make a telephone call,
Oh, I,
make an appointment. So you know, so that says something there. Yeah. And you also go ahead.
so yeah, so I was gonna also ask you guys some questions about like, so is there any kind of like prescriptions for people who stutter and stuff like that? Because I have no idea like what kind of like what kind of like is there any homological solutions to this?
Now, it's interesting you asked that question because Caitlin and I were hoping that you would have the answer for us.
No, I don't have that. If I had that, I wouldn't be here.
No, so in terms of, treating stuttering with, pharmacological interventions, it's a difficult thing to look at because, a lot of people don't really just want to take a pill that'll make their stutter go away. But there is a good bit of research. I don't know how accessible it is in Canada, but we interviewed Dr. Gerald McGuire, and he does a lot of research in drug therapies for stuttering.
Okay.
And he's in the States, so a lot of that is happening in the US, and I don't know the state of that in Canada. Like, we don't use that in Canada for treatment really at all. I think it's really only in the research stages right now. But I mean, the research is happening, and Dr. Joe McGuire is a wonderful person to kind of learn from and look into if you're interested in learning more about that. He's a person who stutters himself, and he is a psychiatrist who does research on drug therapies for people who stutter. And so he's got a lot of really incredible work and understands that, just having this drug treatment without, the speech therapy and the counseling aspect and all of that on the side is not an effective treatment on its own. It helps. It augments the therapy that you're already getting and the treatment you're already getting. And so he does a really good job of acknowledging that while still researching the drug therapies, which is really, really nice.
Yeah, so like in the past, I tried alcohol. Obviously, like I was almost alcoholic because I was drinking every day, right? So I used to drink like almost heavily. I did that for about 5.5, 6 years. So like like I mean, it can help me to like sleep and stuff like that. Yeah, but at the same time, like it didn't really kind of improve my speech, right? So it didn't really, I was able to sleep because of that. I would get like, I would get hammered and I would go to sleep. Yeah, but like my stutter was always there, right? So I tried. That's the only thing I tried was alcohol, which is not a like effective solution at all.
So true, so true, Serena. But if you want to listen to Dr. McGuire's interview, I think we interviewed him, I think, a few months ago, and it's fascinating listening to Dr. McGuire because he actually talked at length about the pharmaceutical research going on. So, but unfortunately at this stage, as we all know, that there's no cure for stuttering. There's no cure whatsoever.
Yeah,
And
there was one.
but yeah, I'm curious around if there was a pill to cure stuttering, would you take it?
Of course, I would. Yes, I would.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I want to try it at least, like see if it works, right? So I would be eager to. I mean, I would try that just like that, right?
The next question is more of a $64 question. Do you feel that being a person who stutters, how has stuttering impacted your life for the better? Do you feel there's any advantages, quality of life issues, being a person who stutters?
Well, I found like I stutter like will test if I'm actually being honest, like with something. So because of that, I think I'm like way more of an honest person because I find like every time if I have to kind of sugarcoat it or lie about a situation, I tend to stutter like heavily. So so I mean, it had an impact. Yes, of course. Like, so I tend to be like straightforward. I tend to like speak like freely. Yeah, but like some people don't enjoy that, right?
Like,
so like, I'm not sure if I answer your question.
definitely, Surrender. Oh, yeah, you have definitely.
Yeah, so I tend to be like very honest about that kind of stuff, like because I've noticed over the years if I'm not really like, into it, or if I'm not really being honest, like my speech impediment is like way worse. So I tend to speak my mind. Yeah, but at the same time, I can see other people don't kind of appreciate that, right? So that's what I noticed and stuff.
So I'm curious now, how would you classify your quality of life now as a person who stutters?
Well, I have a good life. I mean, I have a job. I'm gainfully employed. I work. I exercise. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's something that I got used to, right? Because it's not gonna kind of disappear. I could like roll over and die, or I could just accept it, right? So I have accepted it. Can I don't really I'm not too concerned about like what other people think or anything like that anymore because I'm older now. Or I mean, I don't think it has had any impact on my quality of life because I have a great family who always supported me. So they never had any issues. So I don't really care about everybody else because I only care about my family, right?
Do you have any fears in terms of the possibility of stuttering may impact your, let's say, career advancement? Like some.
Yes, of course. I mean, I will not like I had this conversation with a couple of colleagues, and I told him, I said I would not take any kind of administrative responsibilities, because I know as an administrator, like, that you would have to like speak more, right? So so I wouldn't probably like move up the like into the administration of the library for sure because I have no intention for that anyways. Because so I mean, because I don't, because even though I mean, like speaking in front of people and being engaged with people is part of my job description, and I have to do it. It's not something that I truly like happy with. You know what I mean? Like I, always have kind of anxiety about that. So like, why would I do anything administrative and complicate that, right?
So, Saran, my last question is: Do you have any advice for people who stutter? What was your
Like the only thing I would say is like as you get older, it gets easier, right? Because I think it's harder. Like when you're a kid, it's harder, right? Because you are trying to fit into certain groups, and you're trying to like please everybody. So it's harder. Yeah, but as you get older, like it gets easier and easier, right? So that's the only advice. So I mean, yeah, so it gets easier,
Hmm,
you know.
great. Good to hear.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask, like, I wanted to like make a comment or ask a question because I find like when I do like workshops, so like if I have to like share the screen, let's say, can talk about certain issues or certain things, but like my stuttering is like way less, like because I think I'm like focused on that. So I'm like, oh, okay, so I had to like move this here or to do this that. So yeah, but like if I'm just like freely speaking to a person, it's harder for me. So I actually enjoyed hybrid instruction. I could go into a classroom and 100 people, and I like have the screen open, and I'm talking to them like as I'm showing them how to use it, right? So it's like that that's easy for me. Like if I had to talk freely for like 1 hour, that would be hard. So I mean, I guess like slides and I mean all these, like slides and pages. I'm like showing is like almost like a tool,
Yeah.
right?
That's like me as well. I feel more comfortable speaking with a PowerPoint presentation because
Yes, I
more
yeah,
it's more it is more academic, and in one sense I hate to use the word, it's not it is impersonal because you're looking at words, you're looking at numbers or whatever. But you're right, when you're talking to a person one on one, giving a presentation, that can be more, that is more challenging for me as well. You know.
yeah. I just wanted to ask you that because I noticed that over the years, like if I have to like free talk for about half an hour, 25 minutes, like about a topic, it's harder for me. Yeah, but like if I'm doing instruction on how to, like use some kind of a library tools, and if I'm explaining to them how I'm sort of like using it, it's casually easier.
Mm. And then
So
just to add to that, if one has to do some free talking, depending on how one feels, if I'm tired, if I didn't sleep well that night, or it adds to it, and then it it it, it complicates it actually complicates the communication delivery, the message. Yeah. How about you, Caitlin? Do you have any more questions for Saran?
Um, I mean, not anything super specific. You guys covered a lot. I think you guys had some really great discussions. I'm just wondering if there's anything you wanted to, leave us with, any like, anything we missed about stuttering, about your stutter, about your history, anything you wanted to share before we closed it out.
can't really think of anything like that. That's a good question. Uh, Not I can't really think of anything right now.
No, I mean, we covered a ton in this interview, so that's fair. You just talked about yourself for quite a while.
Yes, exactly. I talked about everything.
Yeah.
I think.
Certainly, Saran, that I'm finding, and I'm sure that Caitlin supports this as well, that I'm still learning so much about stuttering, its impact on my own quality of life. When I reflect, so the more that I talk to people who stutter, especially on some sort of law, the more that I learn a lot. And I mean, the more that we share glimpses of our own lives, the more that we learn, and it really sort of supports and helps us in terms of our like you know confidence level, comfort level with stuttering. But it's just sort of I'm constantly learning.
Yeah.
What do you think, Caitlin, and from a non-person who stutters?
No,
I
absolutely.
would like to add to something before I took it. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So, like, I find that I've already like lost my train of thought here now. So, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So I find that it's the only disability right now where people, actually could make fun of us. Can there's no I'm not even sure how to explain this. Society like see that as acceptable. So I think it's really important for us to be in the forefront and talk to people and like share our experiences as well, and then also like take on like roles where like we have to actually speak in front of people, right? So, because I find that this is the only disability that people are like, it's acceptable to like poke fun at, right?
No, you're
So,
absolutely right. It's a lack of awareness. It's ignorance because of a lack of awareness, and the public doesn't know anything about stuttering, and they're not comfortable with stuttering. And so that's why it's so important to have things like this podcast where two people who stutter can have a whole conversation and people can listen to it and get comfortable.
that's exactly.
Okay then, Surin. Thank you very much for joining us, and like I hope it wasn't too stressful. I hope it was a fun experience for you.
Thanks for having me.
This has been an episode of Some Stutter Love, Newfoundland and Labrador's first podcast about communication disorders. Some Stutter Love is hosted and produced by Greg O'Grady, Caitlin Mayo, Dr. Paul Dedecker, Luca Dinu, Emily Murphy, and Melanie Crane. Some Stutter Love is available on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Overcast, Castbox, Stitcher, and Radio Public. You can also check out our videos on the Some Stutter La YouTube channel. To ask a question, send us a comment or suggestion, or just to get in touch, find us online at www.somestutterla.ca, at Some Stutter Podcast on Instagram, or at Some Stutter La Pod on Facebook. Thanks for listening.